Maya Johnson froze as the white passenger smirked from her first-class seat, flight attendants surrounding her with accusatory glares. "Security for this woman," one called. Then the plane shuddered, lights flickering as the captain's voice crackled. "This aircraft isn't moving until justice is served." Before we dive into this shocking story of injustice at 30,000 feet, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button if you've ever witnessed discrimination in public spaces. And subscribe to join our community of truth seekers. Now let's discover how one black woman CEO stood her ground when the entire system tried to push her out of her rightful place. Maya Daniels was no stranger to fighting for her place in the world. At 38, she had built Skyward Innovations from nothing into a powerhouse tech company focused on renewable energy solutions that was now valued at over $100 million. Today's flight to San Francisco was critical. She was meeting with potential investors for a deal worth $50 million that could revolutionize her company's impact on sustainable energy. Maya had arrived at Houston International Airport 3 hours early, meticulously prepared as always. Her presentation was flawless, her documents organized in her leather portfolio, and her strategy clear. Yet even as a successful CEO, the familiar sting of discrimination followed her through the terminal. The TSA agent had pulled her aside for a random screening while waving through several white executives in suits. The ticket agent had double-checked her first-class boarding pass with suspicious eyes, asking if perhaps there had been an upgrade error. Maya had learned to breathe through these moments, keeping her eyes on the bigger picture. She boarded early as first-class passengers were invited, stowed her carry-on carefully, placed her portfolio under the seat, and settled into 2A, a window seat with extra legroom that she had specifically selected. With 20 minutes before takeoff, Maya decided to visit the restroom. "I'll be right back," she told the flight attendant who was offering pre-flight drinks to first-class passengers. When Maya returned just 5 minutes later, she stopped short in the aisle. A white man approximately in his 50s was sitting comfortably in her seat, scrolling through his phone. Maya took a deep breath and approached with the professional poise that had carried her through countless boardrooms. "Excuse me, sir. I believe you're in my seat," she said with a polite smile. The man barely glanced up. "No, I'm not. This is 2A. My seat." His dismissive tone was all too familiar. Maya produced her boarding pass from her blazer pocket. "Yes, 2A is my assigned seat. Here's my boarding pass." The man, who Maya would later learn was Bradley Whitfield, a wealthy real estate developer, looked at her with thinly veiled contempt. "Look, I don't know what the confusion is, but this is my seat. You must be mistaken." His voice carried through the first-class cabin, causing other passengers to glance over. A flight attendant with Heather on her name tag quickly approached. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her eyes immediately going to Maya rather than the man occupying the wrong seat. "Yes," Maya explained calmly. "I was sitting in my assigned seat 2A, went to the restroom briefly, and returned to find this gentleman in my seat." Heather turned to Bradley, who smoothly produced his own boarding pass. "I'm in 2AC," he said, flashing the document briefly before returning it to his pocket. Maya frowned. "That's not possible. I specifically selected this seat when booking." She again presented her boarding pass, which clearly showed seat 2A. Heather examined it for a moment, then looked at Bradley's again. "Sir, your boarding pass shows 2C," she said, but her tone lacked conviction. Bradley shook his head firmly. "No, it's 2A. Look again." He showed the pass once more, keeping his thumb partially over the seat assignment. "Well," Heather said with a sigh, turning to Maya, "there seems to be a system error. Would you mind taking seat 2C instead? It's just across the aisle, same row." Maya felt her chest tighten. She was being asked to give up her rightfully assigned seat because a white man had decided to take it. "There's no system error," Maya insisted, keeping her voice steady despite the heat rising in her cheeks. "My boarding pass clearly shows 2A, which I selected specifically when booking." She noticed other passengers watching now, some with smirks, others looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. "Ma'am," Heather's voice took on an edge, "we need to finish boarding. Could you please take seat 2C so we can continue?" Maya stood her ground. "I would like to speak with the lead flight attendant, please." Heather's lips thinned. "You're holding up the entire flight over a seat assignment. They're both first class." Bradley interjected, "Some people just need to make everything difficult." The comment, dripping with condescension, was met with a few nods from other first-class passengers. Maya remained composed outwardly while rage and humiliation battled within her. She had paid for her specific seat, had the documentation proving it was hers, yet was being treated as if she were causing a problem. Heather departed briefly and returned with another flight attendant whose name tag read, Vanessa, lead flight attendant. Before Maya could explain, Heather spoke. "This passenger is refusing her seat assignment and disrupting the boarding process." Vanessa turned cold eyes to Maya. "Ma'am, you need to take your assigned seat or deplane. We can't delay this flight for seat preferences." Maya felt as if she were in some surreal nightmare. "My assigned seat is 2A, which this man has taken. I have my boarding pass right here showing that." Vanessa barely glanced at the document. "Our system shows you in 2C. If you continue to be disruptive, I'll need to call security." The threat hung in the air. Maya looked around at the faces of other passengers, seeing judgment, impatience, and in a few, discomfort at the unfolding scene. Not one person spoke up. In that moment, Maya felt utterly alone, fighting a system designed to make her the problem rather than addressing the actual issue. "I am not being disruptive," Maya stated firmly. "I am simply requesting to sit in the seat I paid for and was assigned." Vanessa's response was to reach for the cabin phone. "Security to the aircraft," she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. Maya stood in the aisle, a successful CEO being treated like a criminal. As Bradley Whitfield settled more comfortably into her seat with a satisfied expression that said he'd known exactly how this would play out from the beginning. The security officers boarded the plane with purposeful strides, their faces set in professional neutrality that quickly shifted when they saw Maya. Their hands instinctively moved toward their belts as if she presented some threat rather than standing calmly in the aisle. "What seems to be the problem here?" the taller officer asked, addressing the question to Vanessa rather than Maya. "This passenger is refusing to accept her seat assignment and disrupting our departure," Vanessa explained, gesturing toward Maya as if she were an unruly child. "I've shown my boarding pass multiple times," Maya interjected, maintaining her composure though her heart raced. "My assigned seat is 2A, which this gentleman has taken. I stepped away briefly to use the restroom before takeoff, and when I returned, he was in my seat." The security officer barely glanced at the boarding pass Maya held out. "Ma'am, you need to follow crew instructions on an aircraft. It's federal law." The dismissal was so automatic, so practiced that Maya felt a familiar wave of resignation wash over her. How many times throughout her career had she been in similar situations? The board meeting where executives addressed her male junior associate's suggestions while ignoring hers. The investment pitch where funders asked if someone more technical could explain her own technology. The client who insisted on speaking with whoever's really in charge after she'd introduced herself as the CEO. Each time, Maya had swallowed the injustice, strategically choosing her battles, building her company inch by hard 1 inch. Bradley shifted in the seat, her seat, and spoke up with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to being believed. "Look, I understand the confusion. But the fact is this is my seat. I'm sorry if the booking system made an error, but I'm not going to give up the seat I paid for." He turned to the security officers. "I have a connection to make in San Francisco. How much longer is this going to take?" His impatience carried an unspoken assertion. His time was valuable. His plans mattered. His comfort was the priority. Maya noticed another passenger, an Asian American man in his early 40s sitting in 1B, leaning forward with a concerned expression. "Excuse me," he said, addressing the flight attendants. "Couldn't you check the system again to verify the seat assignments? It seems like a simple solution." The man, who Maya would later learn was James Chin, a tech entrepreneur, was immediately shut down by Vanessa. "Sir, we're handling this situation. Please remain seated." Bradley seized the moment to escalate. "Some people just don't know their place," he muttered, just loud enough for Maya and those nearby to hear. "Always making a scene, demanding special treatment." The racial undertone was unmistakable. Maya felt her phone vibrate in her pocket, likely Zoe, her assistant, wondering why she hadn't sent the usual, "boarding now" text. With trembling fingers that she struggled to control, Maya pulled out her phone and typed a quick message: "Situation on plane. Might miss meeting. Begin rescheduling protocol." She knew what this could mean for the deal. The investors had tight schedules and had already expressed concern about committing $50 million to a company led by a woman of color. This delay could give them the perfect excuse to back out. "Can we please get going already?" a voice called from further back in the plane. "Some of us have important places to be." The comment drew several murmurs of agreement, putting even more pressure on the situation. Maya felt the security officer's hand touch her elbow. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us." The gentle pressure was steering her toward the exit. In that moment, Maya heard her grandmother's voice in her memory: "Pick your battles wisely, child. Some hills ain't worth dying on. But some battles you can't afford to lose." Was this one of those critical moments? Or was she jeopardizing everything she'd built over a seat assignment? As the security officers began escorting her toward the exit, Maya felt a strange calm descend. Whatever happened next, she would rebuild. She always had. Just as they reached the front galley of the aircraft, a deep voice cut through the tension. "What exactly is going on here?" Everyone turned to see Captain Marcus Williams, a tall black man in his 50s with close-cropped silver hair and the commanding presence that came with decades in the cockpit. His eyes moved from Maya to the security officers to Vanessa, waiting for an explanation. "Captain," Vanessa began, "this passenger is refusing her seat assignment and becoming disruptive. We were just resolving the situation." Captain Williams turned to Maya. "Ma'am, could you explain your understanding of the situation?" The simple act of being asked for her side first nearly brought tears to Maya's eyes. She explained concisely, her assigned seat to A, stepping away briefly, returning to find someone else in her seat, and the subsequent refusal of the crew to address the actual issue. Captain Williams nodded, then turned to Bradley. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass, please?" Bradley's confidence wavered slightly, but he produced his pass. The captain examined it carefully, then looked at Maya's. "Ms. Daniels, thank you for your patience. May I see your ID as well, please?" Maya provided her driver's license. Captain Williams studied both documents, and Maya noticed his eyes narrow slightly at Bradley's boarding pass. Instead of immediately stating what he'd observed, however, the captain straightened and addressed the entire first-class cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay, but I need to inform you that this flight is grounded until we properly resolve this situation." A chorus of groans and protests erupted. Bradley's face flushed. "This is ridiculous. Over a seat assignment?" Captain Williams fixed him with a steady gaze. "Sir, proper seat assignments are a matter of both safety and customer service. And more importantly," he continued, his voice carrying clearly through the cabin, "my aircraft will not depart until I am satisfied that every passenger is being treated fairly and with respect." The captain's words hung in the air as passengers who had been impatiently checking watches and sighing loudly now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Bradley's confidence visibly faltered as Captain Williams turned to the security officers. "Gentlemen, please remain on board while we sort this out. Ms. Daniels, if you could wait here in the galley with my first officer, I'd appreciate it." As Captain Williams stepped away to make a call, Maya caught whispers from nearby passengers. "Always making everything about race, and we're going to miss our connections because of her." The weight of being blamed for a situation she didn't create pressed down on her shoulders. But for the first time since this ordeal began, Maya felt a glimmer of hope that someone with authority was actually listening. What would you do if someone deliberately stole something that was rightfully yours, and then an entire system backed them up instead of you? Comment number 1 if you think Maya should continue fighting for her seat, or number 2 if you think she should just take the other seat to avoid further conflict. Don't forget to like this video if you've ever had to stand up against unfairness. Now, let's see how this investigation takes an unexpected turn. Captain Williams stepped back into the galley, his expression unreadable as he used the intercom to contact the gate. This is Captain Williams on AX-302. I need a supervisor at the aircraft immediately with access to security footage from the boarding process. He hung up and turned to Maya. Ms. Daniels, I apologize for the situation. We're going to resolve this properly. Bradley, overhearing from his seat, Maya's seat, called out, Captain, with all due respect, we're already running late. Can't we sort this out after we're airborne? I'm happy to discuss compensation for any inconvenience later. The captain's response was firm. Mr. Whitfield, this will be resolved before we depart. Maya noticed a slight tremor in Bradley's hand as he checked his watch. This man was nervous, and Maya's years of leading high-stakes business negotiations had taught her to read such tells. She thought back to her rise in the business world, remembering the mentor who had once told her, in the boardroom, watch their hands, not their mouths. The mouth can lie perfectly, but the hands always tell the truth. Bradley's hands were practically shouting now. A woman in a crisp airline uniform with a tablet arrived at the aircraft door. Rachel, according to her name tag. The airline's supervisor, Captain Williams, had requested. Captain, what's the situation? She asked, stepping into the galley where Maya waited. Captain Williams explained concisely, then asked, Can you pull up the gate camera footage from the boarding process? I'd like to review specifically around seats 2A and 2C. Rachel nodded, tapping efficiently on her tablet. Give me just a moment to access the system. While they waited, Bradley called from his seat, This is completely unnecessary and frankly discriminatory against me. I'm going to miss my connection because of this, theatrics. Several passengers nodded in agreement, but Maya noticed a few others watching with more thoughtful expressions now. Rachel positioned the tablet so Captain Williams could see the screen. Here's the boarding process. What time frame are we looking at? Ms. Daniels boarded approximately 40 minutes ago. The captain replied. Let's start there and follow seat 2A. The supervisor queued up the footage, and they watched as Maya boarded, stowed her bag, and settled into seat 2A. The timestamp showed her leaving for the restroom 17 minutes later. Then the camera caught Bradley lingering near the seat, glancing around before sliding into it once Maya was out of sight. More tellingly, the footage showed Bradley approaching Heather before Maya's return, leaning close to speak with her, and discreetly passing something that the flight attendant quickly tucked into her pocket. Maya felt a cold clarity wash over her. They planned this, she said quietly. This wasn't random at all. Captain Williams nodded grimly. It appears so, Ms. Daniels. Bradley suddenly stood, edging toward the aisle. Excuse me, I need to use the restroom. Captain Williams stepped into his path. Mr. Whitfield, I'll need you to remain seated for now. We're reviewing some concerning footage. Bradley's face flushed. This is ridiculous. It was just a misunderstanding about the seats. I'm happy to move now if it will get us in the air. His sudden willingness to give up the seat he'd been so insistent was his only moments ago spoke volumes. Heather had been hovering nearby, and Maya noticed she'd gone pale. Captain, she began, I had no prior knowledge of any. Captain Williams held up a hand. Heather, we'll discuss this shortly. The passengers were growing restless, but Maya also noticed a shift in the cabin. Some who had been glaring at her were now watching Bradley with suspicious eyes. The evidence was becoming clear to everyone. Captain Williams stepped away briefly to speak with airline management on his phone, his voice low but his expression serious. Maya caught phrases like potential discrimination case and corporate liability. Bradley, increasingly agitated, raised his voice. Do you know who I am? My father sits on the board of Transcontinental Airlines. William Whitfield. Perhaps you've heard of him? He won't be pleased about how I'm being treated. The name hit Maya like a physical blow. William Whitfield, the man who had blocked her company from securing a major contract last year, claiming their technology wasn't proven enough, despite extensive testing. The same William Whitfield who had later been recorded at a private club making disparaging remarks about diversity hires, ruining American business. This wasn't random at all. Bradley had targeted her specifically. Do you believe this was a random incident, or a deliberate attack on Maya's dignity and business? Comment number 1 if you think Bradley planned this all along. Or number 2 if you think it's all just a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Hit that like button if you appreciate Captain Williams standing up for what's right. Now, let's see what happens when Maya realizes who's really behind this so-called seat mix-up. Maya took a deep breath, processing the connection she had just made. She gestured to Captain Williams and Rachel, asking for a more private conversation away from the watching eyes of the passengers. Captain, I need to share something important about this situation, Maya said once they were in the forward galley. Bradley Whitfield isn't just any passenger. His father, William Whitfield, deliberately blocked my company from a major contract last year. He's also on the board of the company I'm flying to San Francisco to meet with today. Captain Williams's eyebrows rose. So this may be corporate sabotage, not just a seat dispute. Exactly, Maya confirmed. If I miss this meeting, we lose a $50 million investment opportunity that we've been working toward for months. Rachel frowned, tapping at her tablet. Let me check something. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. Mr. Whitfield booked this flight just yesterday, as a last-minute first-class ticket. After my name would have appeared on the manifest, Maya noted. Commercial flights share passenger information with partner companies for customer service purposes. If his father has board connections, accessing that information wouldn't be difficult. Captain Williams's expression hardened. Rachel, I want to speak with Heather privately. And I think we need to involve airline security regarding the apparent collusion we witnessed on camera. While Rachel went to discreetly summon Heather, Maya remained in the galley, feeling the weight of every minute that passed. Her phone vibrated continuously, Zoe updating her on increasingly concerned messages from the investors. Heather arrived in the galley, her professional mask slipping to reveal clear anxiety. Heather, Captain Williams began, his tone firm but not unkind, we have video evidence of Mr. Whitfield passing something to you before the seat incident. I need you to be completely honest about what happened. Heather's composure cracked. He approached me during pre-boarding, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Said he'd make it worth my while if I helped him with a little joke on an acquaintance. He gave me $500 cash. Tears welled in her eyes. He said it was just a harmless prank between business associates, that she'd laugh it off. I had no idea it would become this serious. And the altered boarding pass? Captain Williams pressed. Heather looked down. He already had it when he boarded. I didn't ask questions. While this conversation was taking place, airline security had arrived and began a discreet investigation of their own. One officer approached Maya and the captain. Sir, ma'am, we've found something concerning. With the passengers' behavior raising red flags, we performed a standard security check. Mr. Whitfield has photographs of what appear to be Ms. Danielle's business presentation on his phone. They look like they were taken surreptitiously, possibly from company documents. Maya felt sick. This wasn't just about humiliating her or making her miss a meeting. Bradley had been actively spying on her company's proprietary information. What had started as a seat dispute had unraveled into corporate espionage combined with racial harassment. The other flight attendants, now aware of what had transpired, looked at Maya with apologetic expressions. One quietly approached her. "Ms. Daniels, I'm so sorry for how this was handled. If I'd known what was happening." Maya nodded acknowledgement, too focused on the rapidly evolving situation to offer absolution yet. Bradley, still in seat 2A, was now demanding to speak with his lawyer. "This is harassment," he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm being targeted because I'm a successful white businessman. You can't hold this plane and treat me like a criminal." The irony of his claims was not lost on Maya or many of the passengers who had witnessed the entire scene unfold. The flight was now delayed by over an hour. Passengers were checking connections on their phones, some sighing dramatically, others watching the unfolding drama with open interest. An airline executive appeared at the aircraft door, having been summoned by the growing crisis. After a brief conversation with Captain Williams and Rachel, he approached Maya. "Ms. Daniels, on behalf of Transcontinental Airlines, I want to extend our sincere apologies for this situation. We can arrange a private charter to get you to your meeting in San Francisco, if you'd prefer not to continue on this flight." The offer was tempting, a clean escape from the tension-filled cabin and a guaranteed arrival in time for her meeting. But Maya thought of the other passengers who had witnessed her humiliation, thought of Bradley walking away with nothing more than an inconvenience, thought of this happening to someone else who might not have a captain willing to investigate properly. "Thank you, but no," she replied firmly. "I'd like to see this resolved properly here and now." The executive nodded, respect evident in his expression. Captain Williams addressed the cabin, his voice steady and authoritative. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the continued delay. We're dealing with a serious situation that requires proper resolution before we can depart. I appreciate your patience and understanding." Bradley saw his opportunity and called out, "The captain is delaying all of you because one person couldn't just take another perfectly good first-class seat. Is that fair to everyone else on this flight?" It was a calculated move to turn passenger frustration against Maya, and Maya could see it working on some faces. But she remained standing tall, her dignity intact despite the pressure mounting from all sides. This moment, she realized, was about much more than a seat or even making it to her meeting. It was about refusing to be pushed aside, refusing to accept the casual racism and corporate sabotage that Bradley and his father thought they could inflict without consequences. As airline executives huddled near the cockpit, security officers conferred over Bradley's phone, and passengers shifted restlessly in their seats, Maya stood in the center of the storm, a CEO in every sense of the word, decisive, strategic, and unwavering in her commitment to justice. The standoff on Flight AX302 was no longer contained within the aircraft. Passengers, frustrated by the delay and armed with smartphones, had begun posting updates to social media. Within 30 minutes, #FlightGrounded and #StolenSeat were trending, with partial video clips and fragmented accounts spreading rapidly. Maya watched with growing concern as the narrative spun beyond her control. Without the full context, many online commenters had labeled her as entitled and causing trouble. One viral tweet read, "Black woman holding entire flight hostage over seat assignment. Typical playing of the race card. The injustice of it burned." But Maya maintained her composure even as her phone continued to vibrate with notifications. Zoe's texts were becoming increasingly urgent, investors getting nervous. Whitfield Sr. apparently called them directly. "They're considering pulling out if you're not there in person by 3. Maya checked the time. Even if they departed immediately, making the meeting would be tight. Bradley had seen the social media attention and grown more emboldened, smirking as he scrolled through supportive comments on his own phone. The airline had dispatched a crisis management team to the airport, and Maya could see them conferring tensely with executives near the gate. She was facing an impossible choice. Fight for justice and potentially lose the business deal that could transform her company, or accept the airline's offer of a private charter and let Bradley win this round. A memory surfaced, her mother sitting her down after an incident in 6th grade when Maya had been blamed for another student's misconduct. "Baby," her mother had said, "sometimes standing up costs you something valuable. But lying down costs you something priceless, your self-respect." The recollection strengthened her resolve. Maya decided to control what she could in this spiraling situation. She recorded a brief, professional statement on her phone. "My name is Maya Daniels, CEO of Skyward Innovations. I'm currently being detained on Flight AX302 after another passenger took my assigned seat and falsified documentation to support his claim. Security footage has confirmed this was deliberate. I'm sharing this to correct misinformation currently spreading online." She posted it to her company's official accounts, tagging the airline. Within minutes, the video began gaining traction, particularly as James Chin, the passenger who had tried to help earlier, added his own statement of support, witnessing clear discrimination and corporate sabotage on this flight. The airline crew initially enabled it until the captain intervened. The truth needs to be shared. As Maya's video spread, other voices emerged. Someone recognized Bradley from the footage. "That's Bradley Whitfield. He was kicked out of our country club last year for racially abusing staff. Not surprised he's causing problems again." The airline now faced a rapidly evolving PR situation: support the victim of discrimination and potential corporate espionage, or back down to the son of a board member. Maya's phone rang. Dorothy Williams, her mentor and former professor at Harvard Business School. "Maya, I'm seeing what's happening. Are you okay?" The concern in her voice nearly broke Maya's careful composure. "I'm holding it together," Maya replied quietly, stepping farther into the galley for privacy. "But this meeting in San Francisco is crucial, Dorothy. We need this investment. Listen to me," Dorothy's voice was firm. "I've known you since you were a brilliant student with big dreams. You didn't get where you are by letting people like Bradley Whitfield walk all over you. Don't run from this, leverage it." "How?" Maya asked, watching as Bradley made a call of his own, his expression smug as he glanced in her direction. "Those investors want to back a leader, Maya," Dorothy continued. "Show them what real leadership looks like in a crisis. This isn't just about a seat anymore, it's about integrity, and that's your greatest asset." As Maya ended the call, she overheard Bradley's conversation. "Dad, I need you to call Jackson at the airline. This captain is causing problems. Yes, I have the information we needed, but they're reviewing security footage now. I know you have a meeting with the board tomorrow, that should be enough time to handle this." The flight had now been delayed 2 hours. Passengers who had connections were being rebooked, adding to the tension and frustration in the cabin. Maya noticed Captain Williams in an intense discussion with airline management near the cockpit door. His body language was defensive, and she caught phrases like, "protocol was followed," and "clear evidence of misconduct." Then, more alarmingly, "My record speaks for itself. And if the airline chooses to question my judgment in this matter, I'll accept those consequences." With a shock, Maya realized the captain's job might be in jeopardy for standing up for her. William Whitfield's influence was already reaching into the situation, threatening the career of a man who had simply done the right thing. The corporate machine was activating to protect the powerful at the expense of those who challenged them, a dynamic Maya knew all too well from her years climbing through the business world as a black woman. But something unexpected was also happening. As time passed and more details emerged, the atmosphere on the plane was shifting. Passengers who had initially directed their frustration at Maya were now watching Bradley with suspicious eyes, particularly after his loud phone call to his father. The social media tide was turning too, with hashtag Justice for Maya beginning to overtake the negative hashtags as her video statement circulated wider. Maya faced a crucial decision point. She could accept the airline's private charter offer and escape this pressure cooker, ensuring she made her meeting but leaving Captain Williams to face the Whitfield family's retaliation alone. Or she could stand her ground, potentially sacrificing the deal but fighting a systemic injustice that went far beyond a stolen airline seat. As she weighed these options, Maya recalled something her grandmother had told her: sometimes the battle chooses you, not the other way around. This moment, with all its complexity and consequence, felt exactly like that, a battle that had chosen her, testing not just her resolve but her values in the most public way possible. Have you ever witnessed the exact moment when power shifts hands? Comment number 1 if you've ever seen justice finally prevail in a situation that seemed hopeless, or number 2 if you're still waiting for that satisfaction. Like this video if you believe standing up for what's right matters, even when it's difficult. Now watch how Maya turns the tables on those who tried to humiliate her. Maya made her decision. Instead of retreating to the galley or accepting the private charter, she stood at the front of the first-class cabin and addressed the remaining passengers directly. I want to apologize to all of you for the delay, she began, her voice clear and confident. My name is Maya Daniels. I'm the CEO of Skyward Innovations, and I'd like to explain what's actually happening here. The cabin quieted as passengers leaned forward to listen. What began as a simple seat assignment issue has revealed something much more concerning. Security footage shows that Mr. Whitfield deliberately took my seat and conspired with a crew member to prevent me from reclaiming it. Further investigation has discovered he has photographs of my company's proprietary business documents on his phone. Maya maintained eye contact with various passengers as she spoke. I'm not delaying this flight out of stubbornness or entitlement. This is about accountability for deliberate corporate espionage and discrimination. Bradley attempted to interrupt, standing abruptly. This is slander. I'll sue you for defamation. His outburst only made him appear more guilty, especially when he added, people like you always think you're being targeted. Maybe a few people worked harder instead of expecting handouts and special treatment, he caught himself, but not before the racial undertone of his comment registered with everyone in the cabin. An elderly white woman seated across from Bradley cleared her throat loudly. Excuse me, she said, her voice carrying the authority that came with age. I saw you take her seat. I was sitting right here when you slipped into it after she left for the restroom. The woman, who introduced herself as Georgia Hamilton, continued, I didn't say anything at the time because, well, I didn't want to get involved. But I can't sit here and let this continue. Her admission opened the floodgates. Another passenger spoke up. I saw him talking with the flight attendant before you came back. It looked suspicious. And another, he was checking the passenger manifest earlier. I noticed because he had it pulled up on his phone when I walked past to the bathroom. The tide of opinion in the cabin had definitively turned. Maya stood tall as passenger after passenger offered their observations, each one confirming pieces of what the security footage had already revealed. The airline executives who had been huddled near the gate entered the aircraft, their expressions grim. One pulled Captain Williams aside while another approached Maya. Ms. Daniels, we'd like to offer you a comprehensive compensation package, including an upgrade to a private flight that can get you to San Francisco within the hour. Maya recognized the offer for what it was, an attempt to remove her from the equation so they could handle Bradley quietly. I appreciate the offer, she replied. But I'm not interested in compensation unless there's accountability for what happened here today. As she spoke, she noticed a distinguished older man in an expensive suit board the plane, flanked by airline staff. Bradley's expression shifted from defiance to relief. Dad, he called out. Finally someone with some sense. William Whitfield surveyed the cabin with the confidence of someone accustomed to controlling any room he entered. What's the meaning of this? He demanded of the airline executives. My son has been detained on this aircraft for over 2 hours. Do you have any idea who I am? One executive stepped forward nervously. Mr. Whitfield, we understand your concern. But there are serious allegations. Allegations are not facts, Whitfield interrupted. My son is a respected businessman who has been publicly humiliated. There will be consequences for this airline if this matter isn't resolved immediately. His gaze fell on Captain Williams. Starting with this captain's job. Maya watched Captain Williams's expression remain professionally neutral despite the threat. She learned later that he was only 6 months from retirement, with a pension and benefits at stake. Yet he stood firm, showing no signs of backing down. A flight attendant had discreetly informed Maya that Captain Williams's daughter was studying engineering and had actually applied for an internship at Skyward Innovations just last month. The connections between their lives added another layer to the captain's integrity in this moment. Bradley and Heather had been offered a quiet exit and compensation if they would leave without further incident or charges. Maya had overheard the whispered negotiation. Meanwhile, the airline gave Maya her own ultimatum: accept major compensation and the upgraded travel, drop the issue entirely, or face the reality that the airline might need to resolve the situation by removing all involved parties. The subtext was clear: Maya could still be blacklisted from the airline despite being the victim, especially with Whitfield's influence looming over the situation. Her fellow passengers, now overwhelmingly supportive, had offered their contact information and willingness to testify if needed. James Chen had moved to sit closer to Maya, offering his business card and mentioning that his venture capital firm might be interested in Skyward Innovations' work. Bradley remained obstinate, believing his father's influence would ultimately prevail. He refused all compromise, sneering at the suggestions that he take responsibility for his actions. Maya surveyed the situation and formulated a strategy. She approached the airline executives with an unexpected proposal. Here's what I want: a public acknowledgement of what happened here, mandatory racial sensitivity training for your crew, and Mr. Whitfield taking an economy seat while Heather is suspended pending a full investigation. The executives exchanged glances, clearly torn between proper corporate procedure and Whitfield's influence. Captain Williams approached Maya quietly during the deliberation. Ms. Daniels, I want you to know that I appreciate what you're doing, but don't worry about my position. I've had a good career, and I can weather whatever storm comes from this. His quiet dignity reinforced Maya's resolve. Before the executives could respond to her proposal, William Whitfield approached Maya directly. Ms. Daniels, he said, his voice lowered but still carrying an unmistakable threat, you should know that I spoke with Jackson and Pierce at Elevation Partners this morning. Your meeting in San Francisco may not be worth rushing to after all. The implication was clear. He had already poisoned the well with her potential investors. Maya maintained eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. Mr. Whitfield, did you really think I wouldn't recognize your son? Or make the connection to the contract your company blocked last year? Or notice the corporate espionage happening right in front of me? She gestured toward Bradley's phone, which security was still examining. This wasn't just about a seat, was it? Whitfield's expression hardened, but he said nothing, which told Maya everything. This had been a setup from the beginning. The San Francisco meeting might indeed be a trap designed to waste her time or extract more proprietary information. As this realization settled, James Chen approached. Ms. Daniels, I couldn't help overhearing. I'm a partner at Horizon Ventures. We've been following Skyward Innovations' work for some time. I'd be very interested in discussing potential investment opportunities, if you're open to it. He handed her his business card, adding quietly, people who stand up for what's right are exactly the kind of leaders we want to back. Maya looked at the card, then at the Whitfields, then at Captain Williams. She had come to a crossroads: accept the immediate victory of special treatment and compensation, or push for systemic change that might benefit countless others who would follow in her footsteps. With the support of her fellow passengers, the evidence clearly on her side, and a potential new investor standing literally beside her, Maya's position had transformed from isolated victim to empowered leader. The power had shifted, and everyone in the cabin could feel it. 3 hours into the standoff, the airline CEO himself called the situation, speaking directly with the executives on the ground. Maya couldn't hear the conversation, but the executives' expressions told her it was intense. Meanwhile, William Whitfield had left the aircraft briefly, reportedly meeting with airline board members in an airport conference room. The situation had escalated beyond a simple customer service issue to a potential corporate crisis with legal implications. A flight attendant who had been kind to Maya throughout the ordeal discreetly shared some information. Captain Williams is only 6 months from retirement. He's got a spotless 30-year record with the airline. The woman hesitated, then added, his daughter Madison is finishing her engineering degree. She talks about wanting to work for innovative companies like yours someday. Maya absorbed this information, understanding the additional context it provided to the captain's courage in standing up for her despite the risk to his career. Bradley and Heather had been offered a quiet exit and significant compensation if they would leave without pressing charges or making public statements. The airline clearly wanted to contain the situation, particularly as social media attention continued to grow. Maya had also been given an ultimatum: accept major compensation and an upgrade to private transportation, drop the issue entirely, and sign a non-disclosure agreement. Or the airline would resolve the situation by removing all involved parties from the flight. Despite being the victim, Maya could still be blacklisted if she refused to cooperate with their preferred resolution. Her fellow passengers, now overwhelmingly supportive after witnessing the full situation unfold, had begun offering their contact information and willingness to testify if needed. One business traveler, a lawyer, had quietly told Maya, "What happened to you was textbook discrimination. I'd be happy to provide a statement if you need it." Bradley remained defiant, convinced his father's influence would ultimately shield him from consequences. He had refused all compromise offers, rejecting suggestions that he take responsibility for his actions. "My father sits on the board," he'd said loudly enough for many to hear. "You think any of you matter more than that?" Maya considered her options carefully. The airline executives returned to the aircraft, their expressions grim after the call with the CEO. One approached Maya while another spoke with the Whitfields. "Ms. Daniels, we want to resolve this situation in a way that respects your experience today. The CEO has authorized me to offer you a comprehensive compensation package, including lifetime first-class status with our airline." Maya listened as the executive outlined the offer, which also included an immediate private charter to San Francisco and a significant cash settlement, all contingent on her signing a non-disclosure agreement. Before responding, Maya glanced at Captain Williams, who had been standing near the cockpit door observing the negotiations. He gave her a subtle nod, which she interpreted correctly. He was willing to risk his career by supporting her, regardless of her decision. It was a gesture of solidarity that moved her deeply. After the executive finished, Maya proposed her unexpected solution. "Here's what I want: a public acknowledgement from the airline about what happened here today, mandatory racial sensitivity training for your crew, and Mr. Whitfield taking an economy seat while Heather is suspended pending a full investigation." The executive blinked, clearly having expected either immediate acceptance of their generous offer or aggressive demands for more compensation. "I'll need to discuss this with my team," he said carefully. While the executives conferred, William Whitfield approached Maya directly, stepping close enough that only she could hear his words. "Ms. Daniels, you should understand your position here. One phone call from me can end your company's future. The investors you're meeting in San Francisco? I played golf with their managing partner last weekend. Your little renewable energy plans won't see a dime of their money." He smiled thinly. "Take the airline's offer. Go home. Know your place in this world." Maya met his gaze steadily. "Mr. Whitfield, let me be clear. I've faced men like you my entire career, men who think their connections and privilege place them above accountability. You and your son made a critical error today." "And what's that?" Whitfield asked with a dismissive smirk. "You did this in public, with witnesses and cameras. And you underestimated who you were targeting." As they spoke, Bradley was becoming increasingly agitated as airline security continued examining his phone. You have no right to look through my personal property, he shouted, attempting to grab the device back from the security officer. In the scuffle, his phone displayed clearly on the overhead screen he'd been using to view Maya's presentation materials, showing proprietary designs for Skyward Innovation's new solar storage technology. The evidence of corporate espionage was now visible to everyone in the first-class cabin. James Chin, who had remained nearby throughout the confrontation, stepped forward again. Ms. Daniels, I meant what I said earlier. Horizon Ventures would be very interested in discussing your solar storage technology. We've been looking for innovative solutions in that space. He handed her a business card with his direct number. Call me when you're free. I think we can offer better terms than Elevation Partners. Maya looked at the card, then at Chen's sincere expression. You're with Horizon Ventures? The same firm that funded GreenPath Technologies last year? Chen nodded. Yes. Sustainability is one of our primary investment focuses. For the first time, Maya felt the possibility that this nightmare might actually lead to something positive. A competing investment firm, apparently with aligned values and genuine interest, had literally witnessed her integrity and leadership under extreme pressure. Meanwhile, the airline executives had returned, looking uncomfortable. Ms. Daniels, we've discussed your requests. The airline is willing to issue a formal apology to you and review our training procedures. However, regarding Mr. Whitfield and Heather, we need to follow our internal processes for any disciplinary actions. Translation: they were still afraid of Whitfield's influence. Maya considered her response carefully, aware that her decision now would set the tone for the resolution. Captain Williams approached, having been called over by one of the executives. Captain, we need to get this flight moving. We have passengers who have been delayed for over 3 hours now. The captain nodded. I understand. But as I've stated from the beginning, this aircraft will not depart until I'm satisfied that all passengers are being treated fairly and with respect. The executive's expression tightened. Captain Williams, I need to remind you of company policy regarding flight delays and passenger disputes. It was a thinly veiled threat to the captain's position. Maya watched this exchange with growing concern. Captain Williams was putting his entire career on the line for her, for the principle that people should be treated with dignity regardless of their race. His retirement, his pension, his legacy, all at risk because he refused to participate in the injustice she had experienced. The weight of this moment pressed upon Maya as she considered her next move. The entire situation had evolved from a stolen seat to a complex web of corporate politics, racial discrimination, potential espionage, and now the career of a man who had simply done the right thing. How she responded now would determine not just her own path forward, but potentially the culture of an entire airline and the future of a captain who had stood firm in the face of pressure to look the other way. While the executives deliberated and the standoff continued, several passengers had been using the aircraft's Wi-Fi to research the Whitfields. One passenger approached Maya discreetly, showing her a news article on his phone. Federal investigation opens into Whitfield Development Group contract practices. The article, dated just 1 week earlier, detailed allegations that William Whitfield's company had engaged in discriminatory lending practices and contract manipulation. This information was spreading through the cabin, reshaping passengers' understanding of the situation they were witnessing. Bradley, increasingly panicked, was attempting to delete content from his phone. But the security officer had already backed up the evidence. Sir, tampering with evidence could result in additional charges, the officer warned, causing Bradley to freeze. The phone contained not just photos of Maya's presentation but detailed notes about Skyward Innovation's proprietary technology, pricing strategies, and negotiation points, information that would give competitors a significant advantage. The corporate espionage aspect of the situation had become impossible to ignore. Heather, isolated in the galley and facing termination, finally broke down completely and confessed the full story to airline security. Bradley contacted me last week, she admitted. He said he knew I was working this flight and offered me $500 to help him with what he called a business prank. He said the woman was trying to steal his father's technology and deserved to be taught a lesson. Her confession, recorded by airline security, added another damning piece of evidence to the growing case against the Whitfields. Word spread through the airport that the airline CEO was en route to personally address the situation, which had now made national news. #Justice for Maya was trending #1 on multiple platforms, with corporate leaders, celebrities, and everyday citizens weighing in on the racial discrimination and corporate misconduct aspects of the story. Within the airline, an internal memo had already circulated praising Captain Williams for his handling of the discrimination incident. A clear signal that the company was beginning to recognize which side of history they needed to be on. The airline CEO arrived at the gate, flanked by legal counsel and PR representatives. After a brief assessment of the situation, he personally boarded the aircraft and approached Maya. "Ms. Daniels, on behalf of Transcontinental Airlines, I want to extend our deepest apologies for your experience today. We have reviewed the security footage and other evidence, and what happened to you was unacceptable." The CEO continued, outlining a comprehensive response, an executive apology, first-class travel for life, and an immediate policy review focused on preventing discrimination. More importantly, he announced that Bradley and William Whitfield were being removed from the flight and banned from the airline pending further investigation. Heather was suspended immediately, with termination proceedings to follow. Captain Williams acted exactly as we would hope all our employees would, the CEO added, loud enough for everyone to hear. He upheld our core values of respect and integrity, and has the airline's full support. As security escorted the Whitfields from the plane, Bradley's father made one last attempt to intimidate Maya. "This isn't over, Ms. Daniels. You've made a powerful enemy today." Maya, exhausted but standing tall, responded with the quiet dignity that had carried her through this ordeal. "Mr. Whitfield, my grandmother used to say that justice doesn't always come when you call for it, but it always arrives right on time. I think we've seen that truth today." The passengers, who had witnessed the entire saga unfold, broke into spontaneous applause as Maya finally reclaimed her rightful seat. The vindication was profound, but Maya noticed Captain Williams taking a call near the cockpit, his expression suggesting the battle might not be entirely won. The Whitfields might be off the plane, but their influence reached into boardrooms and executive suites across the country. As the aircraft finally prepared for departure, 4 hours after its scheduled time, Maya settled into Seat 2A with mixed emotions, relief at the resolution, pride in standing her ground, concern for the captain who had risked so much, and uncertainty about what awaited her in San Francisco. What she didn't know yet was that her video statement had gone viral, with over 2 million views and counting. Business leaders were praising her composure under pressure, and the investors she had feared losing were now eager to meet with the CEO whose integrity and leadership had been so publicly demonstrated. As the plane pushed back from the gate, Maya caught Captain Williams's eye as he emerged from the cockpit to make a final check of the cabin. He gave her a subtle nod of respect, one leader acknowledging another. Maya returned the gesture, understanding that they had just experienced something profound together, a moment where standing for principle had turned the tide against entrenched privilege and discrimination. The flight was finally airborne, carrying Maya toward what would prove to be not an ending, but a new beginning. The flight to San Francisco was remarkably different from its chaotic beginning. Once airborne, Maya found herself receiving discreet nods of respect from passengers throughout the cabin. Several business travelers approached her seat to exchange contact information, expressing admiration for her composure and offering potential opportunities. James Chin moved to the empty seat beside her after takeoff, and they spent much of the flight discussing Skyward Innovations' technology and Horizon Ventures' investment approach. "What impressed me most," Chen admitted, "wasn't just your technology, but how you handled yourself back there. We invest in people as much as ideas, and you showed extraordinary leadership under pressure." Captain Williams made a special announcement halfway through the flight. Without naming names or specific details, he thanked the passengers for their patience during the delay and acknowledged those who stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. The statement, though general, was clearly directed at Maya, and passengers throughout the cabin turned to look at her with newfound respect. The crew provided exceptional service throughout the flight, with several flight attendants personally approaching Maya to apologize for how the situation had been handled initially. One senior attendant confided, "What happened to you happens too often. Just not usually with someone strong enough to fight it. Thank you for not backing down." As the aircraft cruised at 36,000 feet, Maya had time to reflect on the day's events. She thought about her grandmother, who had cleaned offices in downtown Atlanta during the civil rights movement, enduring daily indignities with a quiet strength that had always inspired Maya. "They can take your seat," her grandmother had once told her, "but they can't take your dignity unless you give it away." Maya hadn't given hers away today, and that victory felt more significant than any business deal. During the flight, Maya received an email from Zoe with news coverage of the incident. The story had gone viral, with business publications particularly interested in the corporate espionage angle. Maya's video statement had been viewed over 3 million times, with comments predominantly supportive. More surprising was a message from the original investors she'd been rushing to meet. Rather than canceling, they expressed eagerness to still connect, noting they were impressed by her grace under pressure and interested in a leader who demonstrates such integrity. When the plane landed in San Francisco, Maya was surprised to find several reporters waiting at the gate. With the airline's permission, she gave a brief statement. "What happened today was unfortunately not unique. Many people face discrimination in public spaces every day without cameras or witnesses to validate their experiences. If there's a positive outcome from this difficult situation, I hope it's a reminder that standing up for dignity and respect is always worth it, even when it's hard." The airline CEO had issued a public statement while they were in flight, announcing a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination and a comprehensive review of training procedures. The statement specifically commended Captain Williams for his exemplary leadership and commitment to ensuring all passengers are treated with dignity and respect. Maya learned that Bradley and William Whitfield were facing potential criminal charges for corporate espionage, while Heather had been terminated. The airline had already begun using the incident, with names and identifying details removed, as a case study in their staff training. Maya met with both the original investors and James Chen's group the following day. With competing offers on the table, she was able to negotiate terms far better than she had initially hoped for. No longer in the vulnerable position of needing the deal at any cost. "Sometimes the worst days turn into the best opportunities," Zoe observed as they celebrated the successful negotiations. 6 months later, Maya returned to Houston for the launch of Skyward Innovation's major new initiative, a solar energy program for underserved communities. Among the special guests at the launch event was Captain Marcus Williams, recently retired from the airline and now a special advisor to Maya's company on leadership and ethics. His daughter Madison had been hired as part of Skyward's leadership development program, showing promise that mirrored her father's integrity. Maya had established the Daniels Foundation, focused specifically on addressing discrimination in corporate settings and providing support for entrepreneurs of color. The Foundation's first initiative was a legal aid program for individuals facing workplace discrimination. Bradley's father's company had faced a shareholder revolt following the publicity surrounding the airline incident and subsequent investigations into their business practices. Their stock had plummeted, and William Whitfield had been forced to step down from multiple corporate boards. 1 year to the day after the incident, Maya boarded another flight, this time for a keynote address at a major technology conference. The recognition was immediate. Crew members welcomed her by name, and the captain invited her to visit the cockpit before takeoff. A new flight attendant checked her boarding pass for seat 2A, apologizing for a brief delay in the service. Maya smiled. Some things are worth waiting for, especially justice. As the plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the clear blue sky, Maya watched the ground fall away, the patchwork of the city giving way to the limitless horizon. She pulled out her phone and sent a quick text to Zoe before the signal faded. Meeting successful. Now we really start climbing. What would you have done in Maya's situation? Would you have stood your ground like she did, or taken the easier path to avoid conflict? Comment below with your thoughts. If this story inspired you to stand up against discrimination in your own life, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience and triumph. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that their dignity is worth fighting for, no matter how powerful the opposition. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the skies and beyond, where justice, though sometimes delayed, always arrives on time. Maya's journey reminds us that dignity is non-negotiable, even when surrendering seems easier. In standing her ground, she demonstrated that justice requires courage and persistence. The incident revealed how discrimination often operates not just through overt hostility, but through systems designed to protect the privileged while questioning the legitimate rights of others. Captain Williams showed that being an ally means risking something valuable to uphold what's right. His willingness to jeopardize his career created space for justice to prevail. The passengers who initially stayed silent but eventually spoke up teach us that neutrality in the face of injustice only empowers wrongdoers. The viral response to Maya's video demonstrates the power of visibility in confronting discrimination. What happens in shadows persists, but what's exposed to light can be transformed. Perhaps most importantly, Maya's triumph wasn't just personal vindication but catalyzed systemic change, new airline policies, the Daniels Foundation, and a cultural shift. This reminds us that individual stands for justice can create ripples that become waves of transformation. What moment in your life called for you to stand up against unfairness, even when it would have been easier to walk away? Share your story in the comments below. If this account of courage in the face of discrimination moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience. Share this video with someone who might need encouragement to stand their ground when facing injustice. Thank you for joining our community where we believe that dignity matters and that together, we can create a world where everyone's rightful seat at the table is honored and protected.